the 4th season of Rick and Morty series has just started, this series has a much shorter lifespan than other big series of this genre, such as The Simpsons and South Park, but it has created an uproar for itself, the likes of which we have rarely seen before. Undoubtedly, one of the main reasons for the popularity of this series is the crazy scenarios, punchy dialogues, and black humor. The major part of that originates from the creative mind and perhaps the sick mind of its creators, Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland. The program What You Don't Know, on the occasion of the beginning of the 4th season of the series Rick and Morty, which is a very popular animation in Adult Swim. We are going to examine its 10 less heard and interesting points. The creators of the Rick and Morty series met during a short film festival organized by Dan Harmon. Justin Roiland's short film was made and shown with only one intention, and that was to surprise people. And yet Dan Harmon liked the movie very much and later said that he thought the movie was very funny. And this is why when Adult Swim contacted Harmon to make a 30-minute animation film, the first thing that came to Harmon's mind was invitation to Roiland to be his corporate. According to Harmon, Justin Roiland cares a lot about the story and about the details. He cares a lot. And these points have made him a professional writer. Writing the scenarios of the first episode of the series started only moments after being welcomed by Nick Walter, the director of Adult Swim program. From the initial idea of the animation, since Harmon was still working on the community project, the schedule of the two creators of the series was very tight to write the scenario of the series. That's why Harmon and Roiland decided to start the production of Rick and Morty animation as soon as possible. Harmon later said that during an interview with the Los Angeles Times program, "We were sitting on the floor and I wanted to get up and go home." Roiland said, "Wait, if you go home right now, it is possible that we won't be able to write the script for the series in like 3 months. So sit down and put an end to it in 6 hours." And that's how the pilot script was written, which is one of the most popular scenarios on TV right now. While the audience think that the Total Recall episode is actually a tribute to the movie Total Recall, but in reality, the creator had something completely different in mind. In one of the interviews behind the scene, the two creators of this series say that their main source of inspiration for making this episode was not the movie Total Recall, but the series Buffy. In the 5th season of this series, it is suddenly announced that Buffy has a sister named Dawn, and all the characters except Dawn as if they had known her since childhood. While there was no news of this sister in the first 4 seasons of the series, that's why the viewers of the series think to themselves that something is wrong here. In the episode of Total Recall, in the very first sequence, the audience gets to know a person named Uncle Steve, who, according to a Smith family, Uncle Steve has been living with them for more than a year. But the audience didn't see him until Rick shot Steve in the arm, and it was revealed that Uncle Steve was a space parasite that planted good but false memories in people's minds. Unlike an animation like Archer, in the Rick and Morty series, there is no connection between the stories of different episodes to make a general story. Of course, this doesn't mean that none of the Rick and Morty episodes are related to each other. In the dialogues and scenarios of many episodes of the series, we see traces of the characters and events of the past episodes. However, one of the most interesting of them occurs in the episode of Morty Nathan. At the beginning of Total Recall, we see Rick throwing several glowing stones into a trash can. Now, when we go back to the Morty Nathan episode, we see Rick loading several glowing stones into his flying car to bring them to Earth. If you look carefully at these stones, you will see some pink bubbles on them, which are actually the same space parasite that are invading this Smith's house. And Rick was falsely accusing the others of bringing the rocks to the Earth. Only few people thought that the Rick and Morty series would be successful. Accordingly, when it came the time to make the first episode of the 2nd season of this series, the creators of the series suffered from a lot of mental pressure, that this pressure could even drive them to madness for this episode. Rick interferes with the order of time by stopping time to clean the Smith house, and finally it causes the reality to change and drones in several different timelines. Roiland later stated in an interview with the Rolling Stones that making this episode was one of the hardest things to do, and it tore them apart because they were creating a unique episode, but they couldn't develop a story the way they wanted to, and their idea only looked good on paper, and at the end the result was overcomplicated. While Roiland says such a this thing about this episode, but in the meantime, according to the fans of the Rick and Morty series, the second season and the first episode of this series was one of the best episodes of the whole series. If Rick and Morty's relationship seems familiar to you, I must say that you are under no illusion. The characters of Rick and Morty were inspired by Doc Brown and Marty McFly, the main characters of Back to the Future. The Rick and Morty series was first shown in a festival as a parody of Back to the Future, and of course it was after the wide acceptance of the audience that Rick and Morty became a series. The only question that arises here is what character Mr. Poppy Buttahole was inspired by. If you ever thought to yourself that the series Rick and Morty has no overall story, we must say that you thought right. Dan Harmer made it clear that the story of the series is that we don't really have a story, and Rick and Morty's scenarios does not make sense to anyone, and this is the whole purpose of this series. So now we can rest easily and know that Harmon and Roiland's minds are sick. The Simpsons is the first serial animation in history, and that made everything easy for the animations like Rick and Morty. So it is not strange at all that the creators of these two series have collaborated with each other to create a story with the characters of both series. You heard right, the creators of these two series together by creating a crossover of several minutes took Rick and Morty to the House of Simpsons and their famous couch, which of course the result of their work went to the death of the Simpsons. So if you are a fan of any of these two series, do not miss this video. At the beginning of the series, Roiland planned to destroy the planet. At the end of each episode, Rick's crazy decision ended in the destruction of the Earth at the end of each episode. Although this idea seems attractive at first, but it was rejected by the team writers who worked for the series. And the reason was that it would be repetitive and ridiculous for the audience. It seems that the writer made a wise decision to oppose Roiland's idea. The creators of the series initially intended to make the character of Jerry a serious and charismatic character that her children count on him. This idea was firmly placed in the script of the series until Chris Parner, the voice of Jerry, entered the studio and started working. Chris's way of talking made the producers laugh, and this is how Jerry's character changed from an ordinary and serious father to a miserable and loser father. To follow our videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. Bye!